It's my pleasure, it's not really, but it's my pleasure to introduce Rachel Siewert. I'm bound to say that because everyone says it, but actually it's sheer torture to introduce Rachel because it's really hard to represent a person who is so good in every human quality, and she hates it when you do it as well. So you're kind of stuck with this one, how to introduce Rachel without making her embarrassed, but also reflect on her incredible qualities as a human being. Everyone says, I have never seen a human being work as hard as Rachel Siewert does, and that's true.
I think it's the longest campaign in living memory. and certainly all our bodies are feeling that way, folks. But it's been really exciting. I can't tell you how much, how encouraging it is to catch up with people in person, to go to functions when we're getting so many people turning out to functions. So many people actually literally in the street and at my local shopping centre going, oh, you're that Greens person, we're going to vote for you. Truly, in fact, on the day after the election was called, I had to go down and get some milk at the shops. And I was stopped there saying, oh, yeah, you're that Greens woman, I'm going to vote for you. So it's great. We have more door knockers in the Curtin electorate, just as an example, in the Curtin electorate than we had for the whole of Scott's by-election. That's just in Curtin. So we got far more. Last weekend, Perth electorate were boasting that they'd door knocked 860 houses that weekend. So that's fantastic. But of course, why we're doing all this is because we want to make sure that we have a fairer, stronger community, that we're looking after the planet. So you'll be aware that our key campaign topics or flagship topics for this issue, under which all of the others fit, are obviously addressing dangerous climate change. And the Southwest in particular is at the forefront of feeling the effects of climate change. And honestly, I've been working on this issue for, as Jill said, nearly 30 years since I started at Comms Council, when we were saying then that the impacts of climate change are going to be felt. The modelling was already showing then that the Southwest was at the forefront of feeling the effects in Australia and of course in WA, and that's actually in fact what's happened. When it's happening, and when I travel now around here, people don't talk in fact about whether climate change is real. They talk about how they're managing it. They talk about seasons being different, about when they're planting and harvesting, etc. And so that's a significant change, unfortunately, one that I wish that we didn't have to be facing. Then, of course, we're dealing with promoting and working on the new economy, and at the heart of that is climate change and new technologies and addressing those issues, but at the same time generating jobs. And I'll talk about this a bit more in Bustleton tonight, but we've reworked the figures that we did a couple of years ago in terms of Energy 2029, where we had a plan to move us to 100% renewables in Western Australia by 2029. And that, at the time when we did those figures, and Scott in particular was at the forefront of doing this, it demonstrated that we could convert to 100% renewables by 2029 at the same cost as business as usual. Well, we've reworked those figures because we've got such an escalating rate of innovation and technology and development in these areas, and we can actually get to 100% renewables in 2029 at cheaper than business as usual. At cheaper than businesses than usual. And that's probably going to get better and better as the technology improves. And just the other day I heard about some even better solar technology that shows that you can get much... For solar technology, you're probably aware that it's really about the efficiency of conversion of light. And they're improving and improving and improving that. And so that's at the heart of our building a new economy, and of course that also involves all our agricultural technology and sustainable agriculture. And then we've been campaigning for a very long time around safe pathways for asylum seekers and refugees. And the first time I stood for the Senate was in 2001, and the shame that I felt and many others felt when John Howard did that awful response to Tampa and Kim Beazley jumped straight on board. I'll never forget that shame. And every election I've now been involved in since then, particularly the Coalition has been raising the sphere of the dangerous asylum seekers, and now they pretend to care by stopping the boats. That's all about saving asylum seekers. No, it's not. It's still about denigrating and demonising asylum seekers and refugees. So we've done a lot of work on looking at the way that we can support asylum seekers and refugees in this country, bringing people back from the camps, Nauru and Manus. And if you haven't seen that film, Chasing Asylum, go and see it. It is awful, but every Australian should see that, because it is a fly on the wall, because they couldn't officially film, but look at what's happening in Manus and what's happening on Nauru in our names, and it's disgusting. And we've got to find a better way in this country to be humane and support asylum seekers. And then, of course, there's inequality, and that's an area that I've done a lot of work on. In this state, as we've had the boom, and we're coming off the boom now, inequality has actually risen. So this whole thing about, well, we'll support economy and we'll if you support the mining industry and the boom, the effects will trickle down and we'll float all those boats. Well, in fact, we don't, and it's very clear that we don't. Inequality has risen. Western Australia now, at one stage we had the highest rate of inequality. We're only second worst now. We've got the second highest rate of inequality in this country. So there's some clear things that we have to do there in terms of, one, instantly and straight away raise income support so that people aren't living in poverty on New Start. That's by at least $55 a week, and we announced that last week. Also, independent youth allowance. One of the key things also about addressing inequality is making sure that people have a guaranteed access to social services, so that people can get them when or where they need them, and that's particularly important in regional areas where we know that things like aged care, health, there's a whole lot of services and supports that people don't get, so we need to make sure that we're guaranteeing that access. And then we want to move towards a guaranteed adequate income, so that which is another name for universal basic income, and so we want to work towards that outcome. It's going to take a long time to get there. We're not saying we can do that in the next election cycle, because it takes a significant amount of work, which is why we're proposing an equality commission, so that that provides independent advice on income support levels, but B, then is providing independent advice about how we address inequality and start moving towards some fairer system of supporting the most vulnerable in our community. 2.5 million people live in poverty in this country, and we are one of the wealthiest countries on the planet. It really is appalling that we can't afford to do that. Which leads me on to the issue around our balanced budget, and we have outlined, and go online to see all this, folks, 5 basic principles about the way that we deal with the economy. And a key part of that is addressing issues around inequality, addressing issues around debt and surplus and deficits. But if you look at what by the next 2 weeks, we'll have released all our initiatives, and you'll see that we are really clear about where we raise revenue from and where we spend it. So we actually balance that. So we can actually, what we were trying to do is show to the community that these policies are achievable if we're prepared and have the courage to actually make some of the tough revenue decisions. So addressing issues around negative gearing and capital gains tax, that raises $119 billion over 10 years. Imagine how much affordable housing we could build for that. Yeah. That's a much better way than channeling money through capital gains to people that are already wealthy and pretending that it's going to have an outcome in housing affordability when it hasn't. And I could talk for hours under wet cement about those particular issues, but go online and you can see some explanations around that. And I suggest that there's a whole lot of reports that you can read about housing affordability if you're so minded. And we've already announced our plans on homelessness, and in the next week or two we'll be announcing our national plans around housing affordability. And of course the two are linked like that. And of course at the heart of that is addressing the unfair tax systems. So we've got raising funds there, addressing fossil fuel subsidies, not supporting Turnbull's tax breaks for the wealthy, and there's a whole range of areas where we're proposing raising revenue so that we do balance the books, where we can afford to increase New Start, where we can afford to end homelessness by 2030. So some of the groups some groups are calling for halving homelessness. No, we want to end homelessness, and it is achievable if you have the right policy settings. So I encourage you to go online to look at all the policies. We really have given them a lot of thought. They're based on evidence and the issues evidence around how we can move to a renewable economy, how we can address issues around inequality. We can do these. It's about having the courage to do it, and actually the vision and the hope, and also it's about hope that we can actually act more collectively as a fair society, and hope that and encourage the community around giving people hope that in fact we can do better than we're doing now, where we really are growing in inequality here and globally. We can take our part globally, which is also why we've announced this week our approaches to foreign aid and making sure that we're playing our fair share and role in this region globally as well. So Lee Rhiannon the other day announced our recommitment 2.7% of GDP committed to foreign aid, and a plan for how we get there. I'll leave it at that, because as I said, I can talk under wet cement about these issues. Does anybody want to ask any questions?
I want to ask about the door knocking. How effective has that been?
Oh, very effective. In fact, very effective. So people really like to talk to... I didn't actually appreciate this until fairly recently, that people actually like to know that there's parties take the trouble to go out and talk to them, and they really like to be listened to. So it's not just about, we're for the Greens and have we got some policies for you? It's actually about talking in a meaningful way. So people can spend quite a bit of time actually talking to somebody at their door, because people tend to get interested. And like I sort of expected people weren't going to be interested when we first started talking about door knocking, but people really are. So it's been really effective, and particularly for the Greens, people for us have this preconceived idea that we're, maybe a bunch of hippies, or that we have unrealistic plans. But when we actually talk to them about what our plans are and show them the evidence and say, okay, we're the only party that puts all our policies on the website. All of our policies on the website. Our initiatives are all up on the website, so you can go and look at where we come from. Our 4 pillars, and then where the policies sit under there. We put all of them up there. They're always there all the time, whereas the other parties put up a bit and then take them down after the election, so you can't track it real well. So one of my advice always is to people, straight after the election, depending on who gets in, go and do screenshots of whatever they put up on the website, because quite often it'll disappear. Then if you grab it, we can hold them accountable. So yes, it is very effective. Very effective. Yes, certainly can. So it's one of the areas, you're probably aware that we've been extremely active in the East Coast on the coal seam gas, working very closely with farmers. And of course over here we have we have to keep reminding people in the east that we've got different fracking over here. So there's a whole issue of educating people to make sure we keep saying, and shale gas and tight gas for a start. So we do that constantly. I've got a particular opinion around fracking, where I think the issue is particularly focused on getting in as quickly as they can to extract as much as they can in the next 5 to 10 years, because they know they're a dying industry. They see, this is my opinion, I think they see that they've got a short window of time before we do move to 100% renewables, where they can't use the excuse that this is a transition gas and those sorts of things. So that's why I think they're pushing so hard. We are opposed to fracking. I was in Broome last weekend, weekend before last and last week, and we went out to see Miklo and give him some support. Different. Essentially, you don't have control of the power of veto, so to get the power of veto for farmers to be able to say, no, we don't want fracking, mining on our land.